Good evening, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes, and we are getting into the thick of this now. Mystery in White, our current book, is starting to show all of its character and characters. So we continue tonight with Chapter 6, Sneezes Obligato. A few minutes later, David descended the stairs and found Mr. Edward Maltby alone in the lounge hall. Lydia's suggestion to make use of a bedroom had been seized on by Mr. Hopkins, who had declared that if the ladies were going to get dry, there was no reason why he shouldn't, and who had followed them up. Then he had added to the unpopularity of his move by waiting to see which room David carried Jessie into, and promptly commandeering the room adjoining. Meanwhile, Thompson, anxious to earn good marks, was sneezing and washing up in the kitchen. "Aren't you afraid of pneumonia, sir?" David asked Mr. Maltby. "I have more important things to think about than pneumonia," answered the old man. "Pneumonia can be quite important." Yes, but less important at my age than at yours. Some people think I have lived too long already. Mr. Hopkins, for instance. Fortunately, you and your sister seem to be bearing up pretty well." "Oh, we're all right." "That is lucky. Our somewhat odd party needs a few able-bodied members to look after the rest. Our friend Mr. Thompson is sneezing his head off. Not that the absence of his head would make much material difference to his utility." "Come, sir, he is washing up," interposed David with a grin. "As a matter of fact, I think I ought to go help him." "You will disappoint him if you do," restored Mr. Maltby. "Mr. Thompson is one of those sensitive young men who need so much help that they insist on none. He is, as you say, washing up, and from sundry sounds I have heard between sneezes, he is also breaking up. I imagine we shall have to include 2 cups and a saucer in the account for damages. I also imagine that before midnight our Mr. Thompson will be running a very high temperature. He is the one who ought to be in bed." "He certainly looks a bit glassy," nodded David. "So does the lady you have just carried upstairs. What is her name?" "Jessie Noyes." "Jessie Noyes. Well, she probably has a temperature too. I am less certain about the last victim, Mr. Hopkins. My estimation of that individual is that he will develop a temperature if he wants to, but not otherwise. I undoubtedly have a temperature. Young man, I beg your pardon." "You do not like being called young man." "By Mr. Hopkins," qualified David. "Thank you," smiled Mr. Maltby. "Personally, I should like to be called a young man by anybody. Still, I will avoid the phrase in case you retaliate by calling me an old man." "My name is David Carrington." "Well, Mr. Carrington, we have met in a most extraordinary situation, and it is this extraordinary situation that is causing me to pay no attention to my temperature. I am sorry to have missed Charles I, but do you know, I find that old chap up on the wall there is very interesting. In fact, I find this entire house interesting, though so far as I have seen little of it. There goes another sneeze, and another cup, yes, and I am quite ready to contract pneumonia or any other physical complaint to discover its secret." "Secret?" repeated David. "You do not agree with me that it has a secret?" inquired Mr. Maltby. "You mean everybody being out and the fires going? Is that all?" "No, the bread knife on the floor. The bread knife on the floor. Most important, that. Yet, of course, it may be, and that is all." David frowned. "You know, sir," he said, "I think you and I might get on quite well if you'd be a bit more explicit." "I have the same idea, Mr. Carrington," answered Mr. Maltby. "But I can only be explicit on one condition." "What is it?" "That you do not pass on what I tell you without my permission." David hesitated. "I don't like giving blind promises," he said. "I don't like exacting them," replied Mr. Maltby. "You are under no obligation to give this one." "Only I won't hear what you've got to tell me if I don't." The old man shook his head. "All right, I agree. No, wait a minute. Why am I privileged? Because I may need some help before we leave this place. I may need someone to talk to think out loud. You seem to me to be the best person for that office." Thanks. Well, sir, it's a bargain. Mr. Maltby walked slowly round the hall. In his little tour, he opened doors, looked up the stairs, and returned to the fire. Then he said, "You have just heard about a tragedy on the train." "We all heard about that," answered David. "A bad tragedy, one that's going to affect us uncomfortably. But the tragedy on the train is not the only tragedy." "Oh, no." He turned his head and glanced at the picture over the mantelpiece. The figure of the painting appeared to be listening to the figure of the flesh and blood. There is another tragedy, and it may be that this other tragedy is going to affect us even more uncomfortably. You see, the horror on the train, great though it may be in turn, as yet I know little about it, will not compare, I am certain, with the little horror that exists here in this house. Tell me, Mr. Carrington, and I'm just spinning melodramatic words to you. Or do you feel horror in this house?" I'm not sure," replied David unconvincingly. "I am, except that." "No." "Then try." "Yes, I do feel it." "I knew you did," answered Mr. Maltby. "We all feel it, but not in the same degree, or in the same way. Perhaps there is an exception at the moment. Mr. Hopkins, so far as he has felt little beyond his own misery, but he will feel it, too, in due course, for all his pooh-poohs. It would not surprise me at all if he is the first to crumble. Your mind is rebelling against all this," the old man challenged suddenly. "You are saying to yourself, 'Oh, nonsense, this is just nerves. I am being influenced by that silly, spook-spouting old idiot Mr. Maltby.' Let us examine the theory, then, to dismiss it. Did you begin to feel something strange about this house after arrival, or before?" "Before," admitted David. "Then I cannot be responsible. It wouldn't seem so." "When did you first feel it?" "I suppose pretty well as soon as I entered." Were your sensations general, or did any particular thing strike you?" "We will exclude such items as bread knives." "Yes, one thing did strike me." "What?" "It doesn't seem any good telling you, since you appear to know everything in advance. Of course there is to know. I know very little in advance. What struck you?" "Well, that picture over the fireplace." "In what way did it strike you?" "I don't know. Sorry if it's not a satisfactory answer. Shall I put a suggestion into your head?" "Please do." "Did it strike you that the old fellow in the picture was watching you, listening to you?" "But of course, that was ridiculous." "Absolute nonsense. Well, what else struck you?" "You were coming down the stairs as I arrived. I caught a glimpse of your face. You were not very happy." "I'd had a bit of a shock." "Yes. When you saw me coming down those stairs, I was returning from my second ascent to them. I'd been poking around a bit before, and the first time I found a door locked, top room. It worried me, because I thought I'd heard sounds behind it, but I got no reply when I knocked." "What sort of sounds?" inquired Mr. Maltby. "Nothing very distinct. Somebody moving. That was the impression, at least. And then silence." Did you form any conclusion?" "I can't say that I did." "Of course you tried the keyhole." "The key was in it, on the other side." "Well, that was the first time." "Yes, and the second time." "No, wait a moment," interrupted Mr. Maltby. "Have you told me everything about the first time? How long were you there? Was the sound repeated? It is a good plan, I have always found, to know where there is to know everything all at once. Then one does not have to go back to it." "I agree, that's a good plan," responded David, finding some comfort in the old man's thoughtfulness. "Only in this case it doesn't advance us any, as I've told you the lot." "On the contrary, Mr. Carrington, you haven't answered my specific questions." "So I haven't. I was there about half a minute, I should say, and the sound wasn't repeated. No, wait, as we were being so particular, I've told you things in the wrong order. I didn't hear any sound till I knocked. Then the quick, faint movement. Then silence. Thank you. And now for the second time?" "Yes, the second time," said David. "The door wasn't locked." "The second time. I walked into the room, a sort of attic, and found it empty. That's what gave me my shock." Naturally, nodded Mr. Malby. Did you form any conclusion this time? Only that whoever had been in that room had now left it and was now somewhere else in the house. Not necessarily. What do you mean? The window looked closed, or would it have occurred to you? Oh, I see. Well, it was closed, so it didn't occur to me. You examined the window? No, I didn't think of doing that. I think when you examine it, you'll find that it is closed, but not fastened. It may not even be completely closed. You may find... Look here, interposed David. If the person got out the window, why should he worry about the door? He may have tried the door first and then suddenly changed his mind to the window, retorted Mr. Maltby. Obviously, your question cannot be answered without some knowledge of the person, whom we merely assume to be male, and his mental attitude. We must search the house very thoroughly to make sure that this person is not hiding elsewhere. My own theory, however, inclines to the window. By the way, what did you think of our friend Smith? Smith? The chap who came with you? Queried David. Perhaps you are right to query the name, observed Mr. Maltby, dryly. But we must use Mr. Smith for lack of another. I didn't think much of him, said David, nor did you. I am sorry I did not conceal my antipathy. No, I did not think much of him. You know, of course, that he was on our train. I rather deduced that. Yes, it was unfortunate for him that he dropped his ticket. Now, since Mr. Smith was on our train and stoutly denied the fact, what do you suppose would be the reason? David did not reply at once. The only reason he could suppose was a very unpleasant one, and while he waited, someone emerged from the kitchen into the black of the hall. Thompson had finished a rather disastrous operation at the sink. His face was paler than ever, despite a little pink spot on either cheek. The pink accentuated the surrounding white. His eyes were watering. Well, here we are, he exclaimed with a sort of glazed attempt at cheerfulness. He stood for a few minutes on one foot and then sat down rather awkwardly in the nearest chair. It was a very hard chair, with a seat and back of dark polished wood. He looked as uncomfortable as he felt. Nice of you to do all the work, said David. Thompson, Advent, had cut across the conversation temporarily and ended it. He was like a bit of grit that had got into the smoothly running machine. No, not at all, he replied. Like washing up. Well, you know what I mean, if it's got to be done. The pink spots grew pinker. He didn't want anybody to think his soul was so small that the pleasure of washing up filled it. On the other hand, he didn't want to imply that he had been a martyr. Funny how you could sometimes think of the right words and at other times they seemed a miles off. Lots of things seemed miles off to Thompson at this moment. In fact, everything but the fire, and that was too close. Is it getting warmer? He asked. Before anybody could answer him, he began sneezing. It was his longest bout. 7, he murmured, smiling mirthlessly. That must be a record. Not really, of course. I remember one chap who sneezed 16 times. Hay fever. Achoo! As Thompson came up from his 8th sneeze, his eyes caught a glimpse of something blue. It was the blue dressing gown. It gave him a strange sense of peace, though also an impulse to cry. Of course, he mustn't do that. That would finish him. Hot? Had he said it was hot? Mr. Maltby and David glanced at each other, and then at Lydia on the stairs. That fellow's going to be ill if he's not looked after, murmured Mr. Maltby. Shall I put him to bed too? Asked Lydia. What? I'm all right, grasped Thompson as the room swam. I just get them sometimes, colds. They don't mean anything. I'll take responsibility for this, said Mr. Maltby. Stick him between the sheets somewhere. A few moments later, Thompson found himself being led up the stairs by the most beautiful girl in the world. She had hold of his arm. She was close to him. Oh, nonsense. The one thing it is useless to fight, Mr. Carrington, remarked Mr. Maltby, is the inevitable. I think we were talking about Mr. Smith. The front door was shoved open the next instant, and the subject of the conversation staggered in. Chapter 7. The Return of Smith. Smith was not a pleasant-looking object. His coarse, rough suit was saturated with melted snow, and his hair, he had no hat, streaked wetly down his low, lined forehead. Apparently his lips were the only dry portion of his anatomy, for before he spoke his tongue came out to moisten them. The action revealed the fact that several of his teeth were missing. "Well, 'ere we are again," he said hoarsely, after a silence. "God, what a night!" "Weather beaten you?" inquired Mr. Maltby quietly. "You've said it," answered the man. "Worse than ever." "Then how about closing the door to keep it out?" suggested Mr. Maltby. Smith turned and shut the door. Then he glanced at the fire, walked into it, and spread his hands out. "What happened to you?" asked David, breaking another silence. "We thought you'd gone for good." "So did I, but I was wrong," retorted Mr. Smith. "You try." "You evidently did." "What you mean?" "I mean, Mr. Carrington means that you vanished rather abruptly," said Mr. Maltby. "Course I vanished," answered Smith. "You're vanished as soon as you get outside." "Did you hear the cry for help?" No, yez... What was it?" "You made no attempt to find out?" Now, look here, Governor," exclaimed the man, frowning. "I'd had enough or that last time. I ain't come back to answer a whole lot of questions, like I was in a witness box. I come back to get warm. Simmy as you. See?" He spread his hands out again, and then rubbed them. "Oh, was it wanted help?" "If you don't answer questions, there's no obligation for us to," responded Mr. Maltby. "Still, you may as well know. It was somebody from the train." "Eh?" "We told you we'd come from the train." "Yes, that's right. So yer did. And this was another one, eh? What was the trouble?" "The same as yours. What's that?" "The weather. He got buried in it, and he had to be pulled out." "Oh, well, where is he?" And where's the others?" "There was more of the others the last time, wasn't there?" "They're getting dry upstairs," David told them. "Upstairs?" repeated Smith, and glanced towards the stairs. "Well, what about it?" "I could do with a bit of drying myself." He made a vague movement towards the staircase, but Mr. Maltby, who had been watching him closely, moved in his way with a smile. "Ladies upstairs, men in the kitchen," he said. "You understand." As Smith did not appear to, he went on. "The ladies need some privacy. If you see something you ain't supposed to, you can look the other way, can't yer?" muttered the man. "I can," responded Mr. Maltby, rather tartly, "but I believe with the majority it is not always as easy as it sounds." Then suddenly Mr. Maltby's attitude changed. He laughed genially and patted Smith's sleeve. "If the fates decide that you are to spend Christmas here with us, Mr. Smith, you will be very welcome, provided you realize the situation is an odd one, and that we must all show team spirit. Perhaps I myself have not given you a very good lead. You have accused me, for instance, of asking too many questions. Put it down to the natural nerviness of an old man, eh? And let us make fresh start with each other." He held out his hand. Smith looked astonished, then accepted without any obvious enthusiasm, and a few minutes later he had shuffled into the kitchen. "Policy, Mr. Kerrigan," murmured Mr. Maltby, almost apologetically. "Merely policy. Our friend Mr. Smith must be temporarily placated, since evidently fate is planting him among us for Christmas." "Christmas isn't till tomorrow," David pointed out. "True, perhaps I am over-pessimistic," admitted Mr. Maltby, "but however long Mr. Smith is with us, we do not want to make him feel uneasy. The lion springs when it believes it is to be attacked." "Then, yes." David looked towards the kitchen. "We don't attack Mr. Smith?" No, not till we are sure of the attack and that the attack we make will succeed. Meanwhile, we are sure he won't attack. I am quite sure he won't attack without a motive, which is why I am trying to remove the motive. That doesn't mean, he added, that we shall cease to watch Mr. Smith. In fact, I am half inclined to allot you the task of doing so while I go up to have a look in the attic. Thanks, frightfully. Not at all. If Mr. Smith returns before I do, keep him occupied and be nice to him. Where exactly is the door you found locked? Right at the top. There's only one. The old man moved towards the stairs. You noticed, of course, he said, pausing, Mr. Smith's anxiety to go upstairs? That did not escape you? I also noticed your own anxiety not to let him upstairs, answered David. Did you think he was making for the attic? I never think what I am certain of. He was undoubtedly making for the attic. It is even possible that the attic, as well as the weather, brought him back, though I am not certain of that. Mr. Smith has already been in the attic once, and it is merely on a matter of form that I shall compare, if I can, the fingerprints I find there with his own, particularly those on the windowsill. You don't mean, began David and stopped abruptly. That you were not the first to enter the deserted house, said Mr. Maltby. That is exactly what I mean. Mr. Smith was the first. He was in the attic. He left via the window. In a minute I shall be in a position, I expect, to tell you how he did it. And then he re-entered the house with me. This, according to my calculation, is his third visit. Wait a moment. David glanced down towards the kitchen. Then he ran the old man's side. Do you think Smith committed the murder on the train? He asked, lowering his voice. What do you think? Countered Mr. Maltby. I think we ought to try and get the women out of here, said David. There is only one argument against that, answered Mr. Maltby. It's utterly an impossibility. But Smith isn't our biggest trouble. Mr. Carrington. After all, he is flesh and blood. We can deal with Smith. Chapter 8. In a four-poster bed. Well, there's another of us in bed, exclaimed Lydia. Who's going to be the next? Jessie Noyes, in bed herself, looked up from her diary as Lydia re-entered the room. Jessie had only remembered the conclusion of her diary a minute or two earlier, and had not got farther than this is the rummiest day I've ever spent, not counting that time the burglar got into my room and we ended up telling each other's fortunes. When Lydia interrupted her, slipping the diary under her pillow, she answered, I hope it won't be you. How is Mr. Thomas? How is Mr. Thompson? Higher and higher, replied Lydia. Do you mean his temperature? Yes, I'm afraid poor Mr. Thompson isn't going to spend a very comfortable Christmas. She walked to the window, drew the curtain aside, and stared through the diamond panes at the battle between black and white. The battle was, the white was winning, though the black spread its dim shadows over the field of war. The snow was getting higher and higher, too, commented Lydia, suddenly replacing the curtain and turning round to the pleasanter picture of the oak-beamed room, with a rafted ceiling and a four-poster bed glowing in the firelight. We'll probably wake up tomorrow morning buried. If we hadn't found this place, we might not have woken up at all, added Jessie. That's true. Thankful for small mercies. Only it does seem queer, because here's another if. She glanced at her little gold wristwatch. Yes, if our train hadn't given up the ghost, at about this moment David and I would have been entering a big house full of people and holly and mistletoe, with shops and buses and a cinema around the corner. And a large man with a prickly mustache would be crying, Hello, Letty! Hello, Leah! Got a kiss for Uncle Bill, she laughed. Well, we can't supply the shops and all the buses and cinemas here, or the kiss from Uncle Bill, which quite privately doesn't worry me at all, but we're going to have decorations, that I promise. I don't see how. I'll find a way. As I said before, nobody's going to spoil my Christmas. Jessie smiled faintly. Lydia's robust enthusiasm was more warming than the fire. Of course, we mustn't forget this isn't our house, the chorus girl murmured. My dear, after the liberties we've taken, decorations will be a detail. Anyhow, I don't know how you feel, but my own sense is what's right to do and what's wrong to do has become completely tangled up and demoralized. We seem to have got into a sort of, current, and it's taking us where it likes, so why worry? But it was the final flicker of worry that caused her to build up her defense. Could we help the ridiculous snowdrift that stopped the train? No. Could we help losing ourselves? No. We could have stayed on the train. That doesn't make it a crime to have left it. And then your accident, and the risk of pneumonia, and the stark, staring necessity of getting tea inside us and towels outside us. We had to get dry, didn't we? And Mr. Thompson's temperature, and the impossibility of going elsewhere, and nobody being here to say yes or no to reasonable requests. One thing I feel quite sure of anyway, to move Mr. Thompson would be homicidal. I have even given him a hot water bottle. I suppose there's no way of getting a doctor, asked Jessie. Not a hope, replied Lydia. Even if there were a telephone, which there isn't, the doctor would never get here. I wonder how they're getting on upstairs. Oh, I'm sorry, how they're getting on downstairs. The women are upstairs. Do you mind if you leave again for a few minutes and pop below? I really would like to go check on them downstairs. Of course not. I'm all right. Back soon. By herself again, Jessie lay back on her pillow and for a while stared at the canopy of faded pink above her. She had never lain in a four-poster bed before, and she found the sensation rather singular. At first it was pleasant. She felt herself sinking back into an easy, amiable past, where the fight for bread and butter, often so sordid a fight, did not exist. The snow dissolved with the years. Outside was sunny country, inside slow movement and ease. Then gradually the ease departed, and the strange fear began to invade her. She put it down to natural oppressions, her slightly aching foot, the strain she had been through, worry about her lost chance of an engagement, and the difficulty of finding another, and the grunting and occasional coughing of the objectionable man in the adjoining room. None of these causes, however, seemed to fit her current mood. It was a fear to which she could not adjust any coherent cause. It grew until it gave her a definite pain in her stomach. She sat up suddenly, in the grip of a nameless, apprehensive terror. She felt as though the walls of the bedposts were pressing upon her. "What's the matter with you?" she gasped, struggling to regain her normality. "Aren't you a little idiot?" Her diary slipped from under the pillow and slid down the sheet to her side. She seized it gratefully, comforted by its familiar aspect. Then she continued writing as though there had been no interruption. Our train got snowed up, and I and some others tried to walk across the country to another station. Himmersby. Well, one or the other. But the snow was so bad that we got lost, and then I fainted like a fool, twisting my foot, and a young man, his name is David Carrington, very nice, carried me to the house where we all now are, and may have to stay till the snow stops, if it ever will. It's funny because although no one is here, the tea was laid and the fires were going. We had the tea. They all said it was all right, but I don't know, though of course we needed it, and then after some more turned up, David C. carried me up to the room where I am now. He's very strong, and now I am in bed. Of course, he went, though I am not undressed, and very comfortable. She paused. She had written the last two words almost defiantly. She went on, to ease her conscience, and propitiate the fates. Of course, it's a funny situation. One does worry a bit about the shocks we'll get if the family returns. Though, how could they? and my foot still hurts, not very much. Then some people here are rather trying. I don't mean Mr. Thompson. One's rather sorry for him. He's in bed with a temperature, another bed, and of course I don't mean the Carringtons, the brother and sister. Lydia is very nice, and David is one of those people you can like at once without minding, the kind you can trust. Very good looking, but an old man, Mr. Maltby, gives me the creeps. Rather, he's psychic. That's if we spell it that way. And then there's another man, Common. But thank goodness he's gone. The one I hate the most is Mr. Hopkins. I know the type. He's followed us from the train with a horrible story about somebody being killed on it. And he's in the next room now, while I'm writing. I know he's chose that room on purpose because I'm in the one next to his, and I'll bet he's got his eye on the keyhole in the door between. He wanted me to stay behind in the compartment with him, and when I think that if he'd had an engagement to offer me, I might have stayed. Loathing it, it makes me feel horrid. I wonder if I'll ever change, or if it's my fault, or if I don't. You've got to live. Even the burglar said that. I wonder what's happened to him, and if he really lost that brooch, or if he took it. Really, you try to trust people, but it doesn't seem sometimes that if you ever can, it almost makes you want to cry. Of course, I expect I'm as bad as the... Her pencil stopped moving abruptly. The door had opened softly, and Mr. Hopkins was looking in. "Oh, this is your room," he exclaimed, with an unconvincing surprise. "It looks like, doesn't it?" she retorted, closing her diary sharply. "I thought it was mine." "Of course, don't trouble to apologize." "I didn't." "So I noticed. And as this isn't your room, you'd better go away again." Mr. Hopkins frowned. He was in his shirt sleeves, and his thumbs were through his braces in the armholes of his waistcoat. "No need to be cross." He turned his head and glanced into the passage behind him. "This is a queer mess we're in, and we've got to pull together." "Do you call it pulling together, coming into my room and not going out when I tell you to?" asked Jessie. He shrugged his shoulders, made a movement to go, then altered his mind. "Look here," he said. His voice had an excited nervousness to it. He had lost the irritating assurance that had rendered him unbearable in the train. But he was no more bearable now. "We're in a mess. Do you know it? In a mess." "Yes, of course I know it," she answered. And if you are found here, it'll be a worse mess." "Nobody's going to find me here. I'm not a fool, and I don't suppose you are. I read you as a smart girl who knows what's good, but doesn't lose her head. Kind I like. Now then," he added hastily. "Don't pull that face. All I'm suggesting is that if we're going to be cooped up like this in this confounded asylum for a bit, well, a little friendliness wouldn't do either of us any harm, and might bring you a very nice Christmas present." As he vanished, Jessie was divided between indignation and a humiliating wonder as to what sort of present a man like that would make, but she did not have to dwell long on either point, for Lydia returned almost immediately afterwards, and her return explained Mr. Hopkins' abrupt departure. "If you're thinking of trying to get up," said Lydia, as she closed the door, "I wouldn't. You and Mr. Thompson are in the best places. That is, the best places to be tonight." "Why, what's happened?" asked Jessie anxiously. "Mr. Smith has happened," answered Lydia. "He's happened back again. I didn't see him. He was in the kitchen, but my brother told me. He was alone in the hall." "Where's Mr. Maltby?" "Poking around upstairs somewhere." "What for?" Lydia shook her head angrily. "My dear, you and I are what are popularly known as the women. We're not to know things. David and I nearly had a row about it." "Do you mean he wouldn't say anything?" "Well, he told me about Mr. Smith, but when I began asking questions, he shut up like a clam. Everything's all right," he kept on repeating in a disgusting run-of-the-way manner, in a sort of voice that doesn't seem sincere. If everything's all right, I said, why do you look as if everything's all wrong? Have you got a brother? No. You are thrice blessed. Oh, he did give me one other bit of cheering news, though. The snow outside on the front door is halfway up. Gracious! Yes, we're properly imprisoned. Thank God the larder's full. But we can't go on eating other people's food, exclaimed Jessie. Miss Noyes, replied Lydia, suppose the house belonged to you, and you returned to it, and after the world's worst snowstorm. Would you rather find your larder empty or 7 skeletons? If we are to go to prison for refusing to oblige the law and starve, we'll go to prison. Yes, of course, murmured Jessie. Then suddenly she asked, what happened to the bread knife? Bread knife? I just wondered whether it was left in the kitchen. I expect so. I'm sure I don't know, my dear. We won't get morbid. She knew that she had been in Jessie's mind. It was difficult not to dwell on Mr. Smith and the gruesome story Mr. Hopkins had brought up about what happened on the train. To change the subject, she went on. Oh, I forgot, David sent you this love. David sent you his love and hoped you were feeling better. Jessie flushed at this pleasant fabrication. A silence fell upon them. Lydia went to her suitcase and began examining the contents. Jessie watched her for a while, then asked, what are you doing? Seeing what presents I've saved from the train. You won't need them here. It may, or I may, I should say. Christmas has got to be Christmas, whatever you spend and wherever you spend it. Would you like a dear little white bunny or a gollywog? Jessie laughed. What about the Carringtons? She felt the situation would have been unbearable. The door of the adjoining room opened and closed. Jessie stopped laughing, and Lydia raised her head, catching the sight of Jessie's face in the dressing table mirror. Oh, there goes our bore, she said. You don't like him any more than I do you? Jessie hesitated for an instant. Her virtues, like her vices, were simple. One of the virtues was that she hated talking ill of people. She had plenty of opportunities. If we can't help being what we are, she replied. No, if a tiger eats you, it really isn't his fault, answered Lydia. God gave him his appetite. He's going downstairs. Mr. Hopkins, not the tiger. She listened. He has a very heavy, distressed tread. Have you noticed how the circumstances have changed him? What do you mean? You're the same. I'm the same. But people like Mr. Hopkins alter with the weather. They're up at top when things are going right, and they're down at the bottom when things are going wrong. In the train, compared with Mr. Hopkins, we were all tiny little worms. Of course, things weren't going right with the train, but they hadn't reached this pass. Now he's becoming the worm. Yes, I think I'll give him the gollywog. Hello, somebody else? Who is it this time? I hope Mr. Thompson hasn't become delirious. She ran to the door and opened it a crack. Maltby, she reported, closing it, of the RPS. He's another rum one, though I rather like him. I wonder what he's been poking about upstairs for. Half a mind to do some poking myself. Don't, exclaimed Jessie. Lydia gave a little sigh. Perhaps you are right, but I'm wondering, how long can we go like this? Sometimes, something, somehow, everything at least seems so, I don't know, unsatisfactory. We're lucky to have found a roof. Oh yes, that. Only it all might have been so different. Suppose, for instance, our party had been you and me and David and 2 or 3 others more like us. We'd have made a team, had fun. But as it is, we're all bits and pieces. We don't fit. Mr. Maltby thinks only of his psychic vibrations. Mr. Hopkins of his comfort. Mr. Smith, well, I don't know what he's thinking about, but I'm sure it isn't anything up our street. The poor Mr. Thompson. What we need is pulling together, yes. And don't be too surprised, Miss Noyes, if you see me behaving astonishingly. She exclaimed suddenly. The one thing that can save us from causing each other nervous breakdowns if we're forced to be on each other for much longer is a common object. That is, the common object is Christmas itself. If we can't leave this place, it's no good sitting about watching the front door. Yes, from the moment I'm going to work to make this the jolliest Christmas of our lives, you'll help me, won't you? Yes, of course, replied Jessie, rather breathlessly. But what can I do? You can just lie there and back me up. Help me to feel I'm not doing this all alone. Once I get to start with David, we'll join in. And it'll grow like a snowball, only it won't grow on empty stomachs, she added. What would you like for dinner? Dinner's at 8. Tomatoes and spaghetti? In the full tide of her enthusiasm, she ran from the room. Jessie opened her diary and wrote, Rest. But I am sure I'm not as bad as Mr. Hopkins, or as good as Lydia Carrington. I hope she won't be gone too long. Somehow, when she's not here, this room gets on top of me. Okay, my friends, I think my voice is starting to cut out, so I think that's going to be it for tonight. We will continue tomorrow night with Chapter 9. Thank you for joining me. This has been Indiana Homes, and love to you all.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.